Over the next several minutes, we'll see Cygnus move closer to the International Space Station and the common berthing mechanism on the Unity module of the space station on the Earth-facing side. You can see Cygnus moving slowly now on the left and the space station on the right with that common berthing mechanism in the middle of the screen. As we mentioned, we'll continue watching as Cygnus moves closer to that common berthing mechanism controlled by robotics controllers on the ground. And once it reaches just a few centimeters away from the capture point, we will hold, and the flight control team will do a series of checks to make sure that the Cygnus spacecraft and the International Space Station are ready to berth. After that, the Cygnus spacecraft will be connected to the International Space Station and secured through a series of locks and latches to make sure it is held tight. Cygnus today is bringing about 7,385 pounds of supplies, science investigations, and more to the International Space Station. About 2,515 pounds of what's on board are crew supplies. That's food, clothing, and other perishable items for the crew, including some special treats today like ice cream. We also have about 2,300 pounds of science investigations. Additionally, on board today, we have about 253 pounds of computer resources, and that includes some new laptops to replace those that are now outdated but being used on the space station. And once again, we can see that Canadarm2 in motion, moving the Cygnus resupply craft closer to the International Space Station. And this is a live view from the common berthing mechanism, now aligning with the Cygnus resupply craft. As you can see here, there are a series of bolts that will need to be secured in place to make sure Cygnus is properly attached to the common berthing mechanism on the Unity module. And those 16 bolts, once driven, will be our sign of second stage capture. We're now in another hold with that robotic arm. We'll start seeing it slow down as we perfect the location of the Cygnus resupply craft and bring it closer to the common berthing mechanism. Currently on board the International Space Station are NASA astronaut Serena Aunon-Chancellor, European Space Agency astronaut Alexander Gerst, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Sergei Prokopyev. Alex is currently the commander of the International Space Station, and he previously spent 6 months aboard in 2014. This crew arrived on June 6th this year and are scheduled to depart the space station on December 19th.
Station Houston, no response required. Exercise constraint begins now.
And you just heard that call from Capcom Tamara York to the International Space Station, informing the crew that they are currently under an exercise constraint, asking them to not exercise or use any of the exercise equipment while the berthing process is taking place. Alex and Serena actually just completed their exercise for the day, and this restraint comes at a time to allow the Cygnus resupply craft to easily dock with the space station without concern of any vibrations that come with the use of the exercise equipment on board. Robotics controllers on the ground now using that Canadarm2 to once again continue bringing that Cygnus resupply craft closer to the International Space Station. And this time, those robotics controllers plan on using this robotic arm for the next few minutes to continue to bring the craft closer until one more hold and some final checks before berthing Cygnus to the International Space Station. Again, there are two stages of berthing. First stage, which is a series of locks, and then second stage, which is a series of bolts. So 16 bolts that will drive to secure Cygnus to the International Space Station. You can see it slowly moving toward the common berthing mechanism on the Unity module on the Earth-facing side of the space station. We're now at the holding position, and you can see those latches getting ready to receive the Cygnus resupply craft. A great view of that Cygnus resupply craft and the common berthing mechanism as we are in a hold right now while the team does some final checks preparing Cygnus to berth with the International Space Station. Our video feeds are currently in a handover. The space station in communication with the TDRS system, that's the Tracking and Data Relay Satellite System. And this happens periodically as the station hands over from one satellite to the next. All handovers being tracked, and will regain video communications shortly. Once the Cygnus resupply craft is attached to the International Space Station, the crew will then enter later on and donning their protective equipment like goggles and masks to make sure, just in case anything has shifted around during flight, they're not affected by that. They'll begin to unload the contents of the Cygnus resupply craft, that being about 7,385 pounds of cargo. Canadarm2 in motion once again to continue to reposition that Cygnus resupply craft to be berthed to the common berthing mechanism aboard the Unity module on the International Space Station. Cygnus is currently in a hold once again, the Canadarm2, holding as the robotics controllers fine-tune the movements slowly and deliberately, making sure that Cygnus is perfectly aligned with the common berthing mechanism. That Canadarm2 now in motion once again, bringing Cygnus closer to the International Space Station. All operations currently being controlled from the ground by robotics controllers. We can see Cygnus slowly moving in toward the common berthing mechanism, preparing for first and second stage capture. First being the series of latches that you see, and second being a series of 16 bolts. Ready to latch, looking good. Cygnus is now currently in its berthing position and ready for first and second stage capture to begin soon.